you look at that cannon, you can see it doesn't look like most of the cannons you've seen before, because there's only 2 reproductions of those in existence. We fire it every day. We're the only ones in America that does that. And the Bombardetta was a very medieval style cannon. It was considered obsolete in 1565 when Pedro Menendez brought 20 of them to this site. So why would he bring obsolete cannons? Several reasons. Economics is one part of it. People like Menendez, all the explorers had to help arrange financing on these expeditions, so they were always looking for bargains. He found 20 cannons like this in an arsenal in Spain, stuffed away, and brought them with him. He didn't pay very much money for them, I don't think. Might have even gotten them for nothing. They were a very weak cannon, but they were different. They were very unique. They were made in the late 1300s, early 1400s. And in that time, they didn't have the technology to pour big pieces of cast iron like these cannons in the 1300s, early 1400s. And then to bore them out with a big auger to bore them out. They just didn't have that technology yet. So those were made the way a wooden barrel is made, except instead of slats of wood, they're made out of slats of iron, crudely welded together. When I say welded, I'm talking blacksmith term welding, where you heat up iron red hot and feed it together around a dowel. And then they put these rings every 8 inches or so. You see these little rings on the barrel, kind of like the hoops on a barrel, that holds it all tight. So then you pull out the dowel and you get this big long tube. So at the breech end of the tube, you have a container called a servidor. If you look beside the cannon, you see that cylinder sitting beside it. It's called a servidor. And in that, they would put gunpowder and wadding. That would be slid into the rear of the cannon. Then they'd put a big wooden block called a breech block. That's still a term used in today's artillery. And then they would roll the cannonball down the barrel. Now they would have up to 5 of those servidors, 4 or 5 for each cannon, that could be preloaded and then quickly reloaded once fired by a crew of up to 5 men. That way they were able to get off a rate of fire of 3 and sometimes 4 shots a minute with one of these things. But because of all the, the breech block and the servidor and the gas leakage, they were not very powerful guns. When they were new, with a full load of gunpowder, they could propel this 60-pound iron ball, because they didn't have exploding shells yet, almost a mile.
A tree right here.
And if you look at the Bridge of Lions, that gives you a good reference. That's 9/10 of a mile from here. But they couldn't hit anything at that distance. It would take almost 9 seconds for the cannonball to reach that, for one thing. And then, if you're going so slow, by the time we got down there, it probably wouldn't do much of anything. But at half that distance, the gunners were trained to hit targets. They used to throw barrels in the water sometimes and aim at them. If they got within about 4 or 6 feet of the barrel, they figured that was pretty good. So, they had their uses. The other thing about it is, Menendez knew that no matter where he came into Florida, he could probably run into a shallow bay. Guess what we have out here? Very shallow bay. All large ships had to anchor offshore in those days because the inlet was 9 feet deep at high tide. It's not deep enough to make big ships. So everything was always transported in on boats like our chalupa. What's the name of that boat? Taco Bell did not invent that name. That was the workhorse. Those little boats were used. They could hold up to about 2 tons in one of those boats. So those cannons came apart. You can see the barrels just tied on with rope, and they could be transported in. So that's another good reason to have little cannons like that. So this whole field in here was fortified. This is the oldest part of St. Augustine. So it was a big battery of cannons. Fortunately, he was not attacked here. He thought maybe the French Huguenots would attack him, but he never was attacked here. But had they been foolish enough to attack him here, 20 cannons firing 3 or 4 shots of small cannonballs, going about about 400 miles an hour incidentally. They would have to come in here on boats that size too. You can imagine what would have happened. So earlier I mentioned the full load of gunpowder propelling this cannonball. The guns were old for one thing, and we don't know if they really used 3 pounds of gunpowder, which would be how much they used, because the formula for black powder cannons in those days, whatever the weight of your cannonball or projectile, you'd use half that much weight in gunpowder. So 3 pounds of gunpowder. Guess what we're not going to do today? If we did, everybody here would be ruined for the rest of the day. And the neighbors over there in that condo would be real happy either. So we're not going to do that. We use a small portion, but you're going to really see it, feel it, and hear it. And I believe you will be satisfied. The other disappointing news is we are not actually going to fire a cannonball because the Coast Guard has no sense of humor. I don't want to go to jail just like that. We're going to forego that. But if you want to come up to the rope and bring your camera device and put your finger on the button, because when the gun goes off, 9 out of 10 people jump and flinch. And a lot of people take the instant picture at the right time. If you want to do that, come on up and we'll fire away for you.
What are you shooting?
I can still see even with him in front of me. That smells lovely. Yeah, I think I can still see. Back blast area clear.
España. Fuego!
Woo!
Dang it!
That was cool.
That was only 2 ounces of gunpowder.
That was cool.
Can you imagine 3 pounds with a sound?
Oh goodness.
I mean, that gun would have jumped up off the ground. You'd all be covered with soot. Would have been bad news.
Sounds like a good time to me.
But we hope you enjoyed that. If you
That
have
was
any
awesome.
questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I'll be opening the tower for you to go up if you like.
Oh, cool. Of course, and Jane has to stand on it too because she's short.
What are you making? Okay, old fart.
I was going to say, well, we're here because you're old, so.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll hold off on this. Go ahead and make something you can see made from start to finish very quickly.
All right.
So you guys don't all wilt in the heat.
There's shade over here, Ben.
You're already wilted.
We are wilted. I don't know how you're standing over that fire.
How long you been a blacksmith? I've been a blacksmith 20 years.
Oh,
Apparently in 20 years I figured it out.
No.
I like fire. Something
Now, guys, here in the 16th century, a blacksmith would be making tools, hardware, cooking utensils. What did I leave off of that list, guys?
Weapons.
We don't make weapons. We don't make swords. Swords are made by swordsmiths, not blacksmiths.
okay.
And we don't shoe horses. That's the farrier's trade.
No.
That's the farrier's trade in the 16th century. But tools, hardware, and cooking utensils would have kept us very busy. Think about how many tools a carpenter needs to build a house. There were no factories making those tools back then. You couldn't jump in your car and go to Home Depot. Those tools were made by hand by the blacksmiths. So tool making was very important because by virtue of the fact that we made the tools, we kept everybody else that needed tools to do their job working and making the things that they made. So tool making was very important. Now to make the things that we make, we need iron and steel. There's no iron ore deposits here in Florida, so there's never been any iron produced here in the state of Florida. No raw material to make iron with. That's the bad news. The good news is they didn't have to. They brought the iron and steel with them from Spain. So when people ask me where they got their iron, I tell them the same place they got their socks and shoes. That stuff had to come from Spain. We know from studying the cargo manifest of Pedro Menendez's flagship, the San Pelayo, that aboard that vessel alone, which was a large ship, it was a 900-ton galleon, in his cargo inventory it listed 6 tons of iron. I can make a lot of stuff with 12,000 pounds of iron. Out of the 800 people that came ashore with Menendez, 8 of them were blacksmiths, 3 of them were swordsmiths, and they would have brought their tools and equipment with them. Speaking of tools, the most important tool in any blacksmith shop is that fire right there called the forge. I have to have an intensely hot fire to heat the metal up hot enough to make it soft until it becomes what we call malleable, meaning it's easy to change its shape from one shape to another. So what I'm burning in my fire is the same thing they were using 452 years ago. It's wood charcoal, which in Spanish is carbone. Can you all say carbone?
Carbone.
That's how you say charcoal in Spanish, okay? And that was made by the carboneros. That was their job, their trade, their livelihood. So blacksmiths didn't have to make their own charcoal. There were charcoal makers who did that.
That's
And
nice.
they didn't just use it for blacksmithing. The reason the charcoal makers would have stayed busy is they also used it as their fuel for cooking and for heating your homes in the wintertime. So charcoal was very important to them back then. Now, in your barbecue grill at home, that charcoal is going to burn up around 500-600 degrees. In my fire, it gets much, much hotter, 2,500 degrees. What's the difference? The difference is this big air pump back here called the bellows. The bellows pumps air through a pipe, blowing it up through that already burning charcoal, and that air contains something that the fire needs. Same thing we all need. What's in the air that we breathe that we need? Yes, fire needs oxygen to burn. By giving it more and more oxygen, I am forcing that fire to burn hotter and hotter. That's going to heat that metal up. Remember that fancy word I just used, malleable? Means it's easy to change its shape. Look at this, guys. That's what that's all about.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how hard was that to make a hook? I didn't even need to use my hammer. And if I don't want that to be a hook, while it's still hot and soft, I'll just take the hook right back out of it. Bring it right back down to a straight rod. Because you're about to learn another Spanish word. What we're about to make is called a clavo. Can you say clavo?
Bravo.
You just said nail in Spanish. I'm going to show you how they made nails back then. Now understand this, Menendez's blacksmiths wouldn't have been bothered with making nails. They would have brought barrels full of already made nails with them so the carpenters could set right to work as soon as they got ashore. And back in Europe, there were specialty shops making nothing but nails. A professional nail maker was actually called a nailer, and a good nailer could make 800 nails a day. Now, if you've seen the old colonial nails, you've noticed that they're square in cross-section, not round. That's because that's faster and more efficient when you're hammering them out by hand. Modern nails are round because they're made by machines, but when you're hammering something square, you literally only have to hit it on two sides because the hammer is flattening the top surface. The anvil supporting from beneath is flattening the bottom surface. So every strike with that hot soft steel is flattening the top and the bottom at the same time. So as I go down that, flatten it out, I give it a quarter of a turn, flatten those two sides. Now it's square. To put a point on it, I just tap it and turn it, and it'll draw it out to a sharp taper point very quickly. So that's why the old hand-forged nails were square. So to make this nail, I need to bring that piece of steel up to orange hot. What the heck is orange hot? Did they have thermometers back then? No. So a blacksmith's thermometer has always been the color of the metal. You notice that my shop is shaded. It has to be. If I were working in direct sunlight, the glow from the metal is such a dull glow that the sunlight would just wipe it out. I wouldn't be able to tell what color the steel was. I need to know what color the steel is because you ever heard of red hot? Everybody's heard of red hot. Have you ever heard anybody talking about, wow, that's so hot it's yellow? Probably not, but yellow is one of the colors of steel will turn. As a matter of fact, yellow is getting up around 1800 degrees. Yeah. So it starts out at red. When it gets hotter than red, it turns orange. When it gets hotter than orange, it turns yellow. And when it gets hotter than yellow, it turns white. That's kind of an oversimplification because there are different shades within the red, orange, and yellow that you have to know. But we use that as kind of our thermometer. So most of our hot forging is going to be done at orange hot. So to show you how we use colors of thermometer, red, depending on the shade, is going to take you, depending on what color red, from 1200 up to 1400 degrees. When it gets hotter than that, it's going to turn orange. So if I pull this out and look at it, and I see any little bit of red, like right there towards the end, I know it's not hot enough just yet. It's only 1400 degrees. I want to take it up a couple hundred degrees until it's orange. When I start hammering, the sparks will fly towards you guys, so just be careful over there. I don't want to burn anybody.
Girls. Come on.
You
can still
Yeah,
see
we
it
don't
over
get a
here.
track record about not burning people.
I'm over here in the shade.
All right, so that's orange hot. So we're going to start by tapping on this
You
nail,
can scoot down a pinch and you guys can both stand right here.
flattening out two sides, like that. Flattening out the other two sides, just like that. And then tapering that end down to a sharp point, just by tapping and turning. I can get that just as sharp as I want it. Don't want to get it too sharp though. They sell these in the gift shop. I just want to get it stabbed while it's still hot and soft. I can set the length of the nail on this cutting tool called the Hardy, and as it's cooling down, go back over it lightly to smooth it, straighten it, and take out any ripples left by my hammer. Just like that. So there's our nail, square, sharp, and pointy, but it's missing something important. What's it missing? It doesn't have a head. How can you hit the nail on the head if there's no head on the nail? So that's the last thing I'm going to do. That's why I left it attached to this piece of metal here. So I have a means to put it back into the fire to get it orange hot one more time so I can come right over here. Right over here and put a head on this nail. One thing I've learned in 20 years of blacksmithing is that burning people is not a good way to make friends. Once you burn somebody, they'll never like you. Promise you. Alright, that's a good color. Bring it right over here, put it in my box. God bless you. See, look, there's enough steel there to make the head of my nail. Break it off right there where I notched it. Take my hammer and squish that straight down.
When the Spanish did get here to establish the colony of St. Augustine in 1565, this is the type of firearm they brought with them. It's called a matchlock arquebus, but the term arquebus really hasn't seen use for about 300 years. The Spanish did have another name for these that's still in use today. It's called escopeta, and it means shotgun in Spanish, and that's pretty much how this works. None of these were ever grooved with rifling in the barrel. They were all slick, smoothbore like a modern shotgun. And I can fire a single lead round ball, a bag full of measured shot, or just loose shot of different sizes. It's called a matchlock because we use a burning piece of cord called slow match, mecha encendida, to ignite the gunpowder. To make it keep burning red hot, the match is soaked in a solution of water mixed with a chemical called potassium nitrate, also known as saltpeter. Saltpeter is the main ingredient in black gunpowder, and it burns ferociously hot. The cord is soaked in that solution, allowed to completely dry, and then when it's lit, it'll keep burning red hot. The burning cord is soaked in that solution, allowed to dry, and then it'll keep burning at only about a foot an hour, not very fast. The parts of a matchlock are very simple. This is the pan. It holds a small amount of gunpowder for priming. Drilled into the side of the barrel next to the pan, there's a small hole called the vent. The vent is what lets the fire from the pan get into the barrel to set off the main charge inside. The part that holds the match is called the serpentine because it's shaped like a serpent or snake. Finally, when I squeeze this long Spanish trigger, it lowers the head of the serpentine down to guide that burning match into the pan full of powder, causing the weapon to go bang in a very loud way. Now in our day, it takes about 40 to 45 seconds to load one of these. The loading technology available to us simply won't let us go any faster than that. I begin with my priming flask, which is full of very fine gunpowder that burns hot and very fast to set off the charge in the barrel. I pour a little bit of this powder here into the pan, tap on the side of the weapon to seat the powder, and close the pan lid to seal it all off. Every time I do that, it's going to leave a pretty substantial amount of gunpowder sitting on the pan lid. I hate to tell you what that would do to me if I left it there. So, not wishing to burn my face off, I have to shake, blow, and wipe down the entire area to get rid of any gunpowder that might still be up there. Now the gun goes to rest and I pick up my charging flask. This is the powder that fires the bullet, and it's a lot coarser, bigger grain than the powder I just used to prime. The spout is a built-in powder measure that holds just the right amount of gunpowder for a single shot. With my finger plugging the spout, I open the flask upside down, allow the spout to fill. That takes a few seconds. Close the flask and pour that powder down the barrel just like this. Now, if I had a bullet or a bag of shot, this is normally when those would go down the barrel. But in a park full of people, it's not a good idea to fire bullets and shots, so we don't do that. But I am going to put some wadding in the barrel to compress the powder. The Spanish found this stuff growing from the branches of trees everywhere. They quickly learned that they could use it as wadding on top of shot in a gun barrel. Not only will it hold the shot firmly in place, it's abrasive enough to clean the bore of the barrel with every use, making the maintenance of one of these weapons much easier. The English called this Spanish moss, but that was an insult to the Spanish, who never called it that. For their part, the Spanish didn't like their neighbors, the French. So the Spanish called it barba francesa, French beard, to insult the French, who never called it that. The only people who weren't insulting about it were the Native Americans, who simply called it what they thought it was, tree hair. So, the tree hair goes down the barrel. This is the rammer. I ram this down on top of the gunpowder, return the rammer. Now I have to deal with the match. I blow on it to make it burn hot, and I place it back in the jaws of the serpentine. Now I have to make sure that the burning tip of the match is going to hit the powder in the pan right in the middle when I'm ready to fire. So to test it, just before I fire, I have to lower the match down to the pan lid to aim it to just the right spot. Think of what would happen if I'm doing this and I still had any gunpowder up on the pan lid. Poof is right. My face would become a cookie and the gun would go off right into the backs of the guys in front of me. Not a happy moment. My commands will be in Spanish. This will be loud. So especially for the youngsters, anyone with developing or sensitive hearing, cover your ears. Raven, la mecha. Preparen. Apunten. Disparen.
Woo, that was loud.
And that's how we get rid of our peacocks, one peacock at a time. Ah, you found the remains of one right there. Very good.